All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I am your host, Cardinellis, with Cody the Oracle.
Hey, everybody.
And we're actually going to do a little bit of a cursory look as to what Iowa is thinking about Andrew Yang. The vote is literally upon us tomorrow, practically.
Hours.
Yeah. We are in the 11th hour, and this is the calm before the storm. So we're going to do one last cursory look at most of the newspapers in Iowa that and try and glean an idea of what they're thinking and try and see if we can't get any kind of suppositions from this data that we're about to glean. So, Cody, actually, should I tell them the cool story about where this originated from the CIA or no?
No, we can get that at the end.
We can get that at the end? Okay. There's a really cool personal story about me in Argentina and the CIA. Afterwards, worth hanging around for. So anyway, Cody, tell us what Iowa is saying about one Andrew Yang in the calm before the storm.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's obviously, a lot of perspectives to get. We get a lot of perspectives, mostly on Twitter, but social media, I get a lot of perspectives from people on the ground in Iowa campaigning for Andrew Yang and what they see, right? Like the candidates, obviously, I've heard what Andrew Yang says about what he sees at his crowds and stuff. People in Iowa, the polls, right? But one interesting thing we don't look at as much is what is the more local Iowa media saying? For example, I have the first article pulled up. This is from the Gazette. I believe it's the Cedar Rapids Gazette. I could be wrong. However, according to my research, depending on who you ask, second or third largest circulated newspaper in the state of Iowa, only behind the Des Moines County Register, which is like leaps and bounds ahead of the others from what I found. Anyway, very interesting. This was posted on Thursday, January 30th, but again, running into the weekend before, and we had this op-ed come up. It's from they say it's from a guest columnist in Heather Mead, but still, we have in one of the largest circulating publications in the state of Iowa, an op-ed running saying that Yang is the best choice for Cedar Rapids. And There's some interesting stuff in here. So, and where it's one of the reasons why it's kind of fun looking at these more local, because we can read what the big national people say, but I have to say from the, what did they say, like the 40,000 foot view in DC or Los Angeles, New York, you're not going to get a kind of
opening sentence like this,
perception like this, right? Because right, Cedar Rapids had to adapt to a new way of living after the flood of 2008. I honestly have to admit, there's a lot that happened in 2008. I didn't know there was a big flood in Iowa. Yeah. We lost our businesses and our homes. Some of us were able to recover our losses over time. Some of us weren't able to bounce back, and we're still struggling to find our place in the workforce, buy our new home, and even worse, some of us are now part of the 11.4% of Cedar Rapids population living in poverty. One out of 9 of our neighbors is in poverty and are unable to make ends meet. The Gazette brought attention to our poverty problem in July 18 when it reported that 1 in 6 working Iowa households cannot obtain their basic needs. This means there is someone in your neighborhood who has a full-time job and they can't afford to buy food and pay their bills at the same time. Again, very local politics here. Poverty is a serious concern for Cedar Rapids, and if we found the transition period after the flood difficult to manage, think about what will happen when automation and artificial intelligence takes over our manufacturing and retail jobs. And there we go. That is, and we'll go through and talk more about this to get in, but this is really what stands out to me. It's kind of fun about more local stuff is you'll see that the connection between Andrew Yang. It's one thing to talk about automation and talk about, what does it mean if a lot of retail clerk jobs go away because more people use Amazon? What does it actually mean? Well, It means that you have a town like Cedar Rapids that over a decade ago had a natural disaster that kind of set people back. And then the recession was that year as well. Couldn't have helped, right? Like, this is stuff that you can't see from, ironically enough, a studio in Los Angeles. You need to sometimes find out people in Iowa are actually saying about this stuff and bringing that to his platform, right?
You see how other competent minds notice and observe how that $1,000 a month would totally change their lives. And we're always used to thinking, well, this is the way that I see UBI being able to benefit my community. And a lot of people like me, and maybe in the ways that it might benefit other people not like me that I'm aware of. But then all of a sudden, we're made aware of other things we had no idea had even happened. And you see how, wow, like universal basic income really does universally solve a lot of universal problems. You know what I'm saying? I had no idea there was a flood there. Actually, now that you mention it, I think I do remember hearing headlines about it. But I mean, 2008, it's so interesting when we had the quake of 94. I mean, I don't even know if you were even born yet, but you're probably like a baby, but I remember it. Okay.
I was an infant. Yes.
And it's crazy. We rebuilt pretty quickly, but there were homes still a decade later where all of the bureaucratic red tape of them getting red tagged and the foundation cracks, the government has to say it's okay to rebuild and stuff like that, you would still walk around up to a decade later and say, wow, like we really haven't actually totally recovered.
How about Ventura County's fires from 2017? I mean, there's still parts of Ventura County that have been devastated by fires. And again, I wouldn't expect somebody from Cedar Rapids to be super up to date on what happened in Ventura County in the fire season 2017. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of the reasons why these publications are useful. They get to actually hear these things, right?
Yeah. So, hey, do you have that list of the newspapers that you could pop up and show pretty quickly?
I think I closed that.
Oh, bummer. Okay, so basically, just so you guys know, the whole inspiration for this was I had some friends that worked in the open source media division at the CIA, where basically their job was just to read all of the newspapers of the country that they were assigned and kind of develop an idea of what that country was saying about the local ambassador's visit or the recent presidential visit or the recent forum that had U.S. representatives there or the visit from the senator or whatever. And over the next, 3 or 4 days, they would read all of the news put out by the different outlets and the different op-eds and everything. And then they'd return like a week later and they'd say, okay, Senator so-and-so, during your visit to Buenos Aires, Argentina or whatever, there were 25 articles written about you. 21 of them were generally positive. These 4 were written by non-credible outlets. Don't worry, look, it seems like they like you. Or else they come back with bad news and say, okay, look, apparently you had a gaffe there and 21 of the 25 newspaper articles said that you sucked and nobody wanted you back. So maybe we should polish on your social skills before you go there. And it's interesting trying to be able to get a heartbeat or feel a pulse based upon the media outlets there. So anyway, we looked up the top 10 of the largest newspapers in not Des Moines, but in Iowa, and decided we try and get a feel for at least, 4 or 5 of them. So interestingly enough, the second biggest one came out with an op-ed straight up endorsing Andrew Yang, saying this is what Cedar Rapids needs, which is, wow, I didn't see that one coming. You'd think that almost would have been worthy of some kind of press release because it's the second largest newspaper in their press release and smaller stuff than that. You'd think that, somebody would have gotten a hold of that and made a little bit more pub out of it. But then we actually are going to check out next the Iowa State, or actually I shouldn't say in what order, but what's next? Actually, Cody, tell us what's next.
We'll just kind of go through a few of these, and again, just kind of getting an encompassing view, because some of these, this is what we're grabbing from the Iowa City Press Citizen, which I believe is also a Newsweek publication, or USA Today publication like Des Moines Register. Anyway, they go here and talk about the Andrew Yang attracts hundreds at Iowa City rally. This was published a couple days ago now. We're looking at Wednesday, so the 29th of January. It says, in the 12th day of Andrew Yang's bus tour through Iowa caucus before Monday, the entrepreneur spoke to a crowd at the University of Iowa about the loss of millions of manufacturing jobs to mechanization seen across the country. Stumping in Iowa City at the Iowa Memorial Union, he shared why he thinks the country needs a universal basic income. Oh, sorry. Maybe you guys want to see the article as well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what we did to those manufacturing jobs is not stopping there, he said. How many of you noticed stores closing in Iowa? And I got to say, Iowa City is a kind of thriving oasis in the state. City is buoyed by the University of Iowa, but things are much grimmer elsewhere in the Hawkeye State, he said. Yeah. I wonder how many candidates also emerge, especially candidates like Andrew Yang. Some people don't campaign as much in Iowa. He's going to emerge for the rest of his life, just like understanding Iowa's like general geography, what the various cities are like. It's like athletes at the end of their career, they're like, oh man, musicians, like I had to stop in this city so many times. Like, I wonder how many candidates are like, oh, Iowa, man, I know that. Anyway, by the way, we have to mention, quick thing, shout out to our friend Elaine here from California.
Yeah, she got some pub.
Yeah, we met her at a couple of the local Yang events in Los Angeles. They say Elaine Way, 36, California, quit her job in September to organize for him full-time. A program coordinator at the Housing Authority of Los Angeles for several years. She said she understands how much a universal basic income would make an impact. So I like the way that the Iowa press is kind of like, ooh, a Californian. It's not like, oh, Californians, but just like, wow, what? Kind of the same way in California, you're like, why did you quit your job in Iowa and move to California? Same way, like, you quit your job in California and came out here. Politics, baby. Gets people all over the place. So, they go through and they mention some stuff from her. He's volunteer leader. Way said she drove from Los Angeles to Iowa City to organize canvassing. She's been here since January 5th and said she'll go to New Hampshire and South Carolina for the next primaries, which, again, interesting seeing the kind of... oh my God, I'm going to pull this article up. This is really great to what we're talking about. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into everything here, but I just want to point this out. So part of what's going on in the Yang Week or Yang Month, the kind of grassroots canvassing going on in in Iowa. Can't think of the name. There's been, a little kind of not sub-movement, but a group of people labeling themselves the Sorority of Yang who've been down there doing a lot of great stuff. I believe Kai Watson and some others are there that you might be familiar with. Anyway.
It's either that or else it's the opening of a horror film.
Yeah. Well, but the reason why I brought it up is because just a couple of days ago, this was yesterday's article.
Based upon the picture of the house and the snow surrounding it.
Well,
I'm pretty sure there's a dark figure in one of those top windows that we see right there. They have to be able to see it, though, so they know what I'm talking about.
Okay. But anyway, it just wanted, again, to the point, the Yang Gang's making some waves themselves and seeing some articles. This isn't the only one. This is just one I grabbed from one of this WQAD8, I'm assuming a local network. And they talk all about a little bit here. There's a couple other articles about this as well. My larger point just being that the Yang Gang is starting to actually draw attention themselves locally within Iowa. So it's kind of interesting as we're getting to Caucus Day. I've seen these articles. Like I said, this is one. I think there's 2 or 3 other big ones. I mean, here we go. Quad City Times published this article saying, these women moved to Iowa to start a sorority. The mission is to elect Andrew Yang president from January 17th, a couple of weeks ago. So just, I had seen these articles and I remember them and I hadn't thought about it till right now. Like, oh yeah, if we're talking about local publications in Iowa talking about Yang, we're talking about the Yang Gang making news in Iowa. And actually, oh my God, hold on. There's one more thing I want to pull up locally from Iowa. I don't know why this, I believe this is from Iowa. I think there's a story. Here we go. This is the Keene Sentinel. We're now pulling up the Keene Sentinel. But Yang Gang comes through a school. Maybe this is not Iowa. But either way, local publications. It says, Yang Gang comes through with school supplies after Swansea man's tweet. So surrounded by teacher supplies donated by the Yang Gang, in quotes, are Zachary Griffin with his family from left wife Emily Amanda Hopkins and sons Maddox, Bailey, and Bentley. So for Zachary Griffin of Swansea, what started as an unsettling observation in a tweet turned into a windfall of school supplies. Griffin, 44, said he's never been that involved in politics, whether national or local, but ever since becoming an ardent supporter of and volunteer for Democratic presidential hopeful Andrew Yang. And how many times you hear that story? I've never been into politics, but now I'm it's not like I'm into politics a little now. It's people go from I'm not really that into politics to I am a full-on big-time Andrew Yang supporter. I like hearing that. So when he recently heard 2 of his boys, Bailey and Bentley, who attends Mount Caesar, talk about how their teachers at the Swansea elementary schools often pay out of pockets for school supplies, he tried something new.
So,
and they go on, sorry, just to mention, he goes on and talks about how they posted it. He linked to an Amazon wishlist page, and the next day school supplies started showing up, and it was I remember kind of seeing this happen on Twitter, the Yang Gang saying, hey, can we help with this stuff? And it's amazing the kind of stuff, the mobilization you will see. I think it's cool seeing some local outlets. And again, this is not a 100-word blurb you see on TMZ. They called people, did a full article on this because it's very interesting.
Yeah, and what I kind of noticed here that was heartening, if you're a member of the Yang Gang, is on 3 or 4 of the newspapers, and it looks like they're all owned by USA Today. We saw the same article.
And just one point of clarification, Swansea, this article right here, New Hampshire.
Is New Hampshire, yeah.
Another early voting state.
Yes.
Small implication.
So, anyway, can you pull up the Iowa State Daily article? Okay. So, one thing I noticed about all the Iowa ones, not just the New Hampshire article, that in a couple of the newspapers is very predictable. USA Today owns a bunch of local newspaper. It's a conglomerate. And so you're going to see a lot of the same headlines and the same pictures popping out because when a writer writes one article, it's going to show up in 3 different smaller newspapers. Okay, that makes sense. But of all the articles written by the actual local people, there's 2 things that basically pop to the top. A general surprise in the attendance of the rally. Okay. So usually the headline was okay, lots of people showing up, which is cool. And then the second one, obviously besides the endorsement, which is pretty cool. But the second thing that I noticed was that there was no real hit pieces. Do you know what I'm saying? There was no real Andrew Yang's bad for X or Y, Z reason. There was oh, hey, this guy's drawing crowds and, oh, Andrew Yang's the best one for us in op-eds, But there was no like why Andrew Yang sucks and needs to be chased from the state. All right.
Generally speaking, there wasn't a whole lot of that for any candidate, really. So,
Oh no, you can't say that for any candidate. There are some far more polarizing figures.
I mean, just the
in the
Iowa
Democratic
local
primaries
press,
right
for the
now.
most part, seems to not be slamming people so much.
I mean, we've seen op-eds that are like Pete Buttigieg is a wolf in sheep's clothing. You know what I'm saying, and stuff like that. Generally, it was lighthearted. Generally, it was good, and in that regard, I kind of think no news is good news for the Andrew Yang campaign. Like no bad press is inherently kind of good press for the Andrew Yang campaign. There was one that got a little bit spicy. It seemed like the Iowa State Daily was really interesting because all the other articles, if they ever dove into why they liked him and they were endorsing him or what people were saying about Andrew Yang that they liked that brought them to the rally, it was almost always economic. The guy that endorsed him said Cedar Rapids needs a way to recover from like this that flood you talked about. And others just said, we like the transformational nature of the freedom dividend. But in the Iowa State Daily one, it was interesting. They took all of the candidates and basically said where they stand on key issues. And with Andrew Yang's, it was interesting. He got 3 paragraphs. And the first one was, I believe if I remember correctly, it was healthcare. Second was climate change. And then third was, what was the third one, Cody? College education. Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting that the Iowa State Daily, I wouldn't say it was a hit piece, but they definitely didn't like his Medicare for all isn't the traditional progressive Medicare for all. And they liked that he said something positive about the Green New Deal. And then the third thing I thought was really interesting, but it does make sense that a college newspaper was talking about the importance of decreasing the cost of college education. But none of these seemed like particularly bad. So it seems to me, Cody, I guess based off of everything you read off these 5 or 6 articles that we cruised through, what would you say the general pulse of Iowa seems to be based upon their publications?
Well, to be frank, I can't tell you based on the journalists because they,
yeah,
no offense, journalists, they have no idea most of them, they're out of touch. But as far as
Yeah.
what is being written about and reported about in Andrew Yang, I think a good way to kind of finish that off, I believe this is the article I want to highlight. Here we go. So this is an article from the Quad City Times. We brought them up before for the article they wrote on the sorority of young people. So voters' second choice could be decisive in a close Iowa caucus. Article posted today. Again, kind of the Friday last article before the actual caucus on Monday for the most part. And they go through and they talk about a lot about one particular Andrew Yang. And I think this is a good way to sum up how the kind of media class type people are currently seeing Andrew Yang in Iowa. And they go on to say that Yang acknowledged this week that multiple campaigns have reached out to his team about potential alliances. Speaking to reporters on Wednesday, said he's not planning to urge his supporters to head to a specific second choice if he doesn't make it past the first round of voting. Right now, we have no guidance for our caucus goers who do not find this to be viable, said Yang, downplaying his ability to direct his voters toward any specific candidate, even if he wanted to. The people that support my campaign are very diverse in their leanings. I frankly think I'd have a hard time getting them to do anything that they weren't naturally inclined to do. Yang then conceded that Sanders, if anyone, might be best positioned to inherit his support, and there was anecdotal evidence suggesting Yang was right.
Probably mostly based upon age, and we talked about that yesterday.
Well, no, they go on to speak to a Victor Corneo, a 45-year-old engineer, so not very young, who attended a Sanders campaign event in Iowa City, said he was still deciding between businessman Yang and Sanders. He guessed that he may get the chance to caucus for both if the proceedings go multiple rounds. This is a quote from Mr. Cornejo. I like Andrew Yang because he has a different approach, and he sees an economic approach to the future. I like the fact that he's an outsider. Bernie has been around for a while, and there's some stability in that, and that actually brings some of the trust. Let me go on and speak more, but that sums up to me a lot. The idea is that Yang is now a player in this caucus, and the people are recognizing it. They're looking and they're saying, so if he isn't viable, who are those people? Like we were talking about yesterday, people want the Yang gang. They're like, who is he going to? People are looking now.
Yeah.
Like I said, this particular publication's writing articles about the Yang gang and what they're doing in Iowa. They see these people, they know they're there, and they're like, so where could they be going if Yang has officially implanted himself as a firm. Now, He will never be the media darling Amy Klobuchar is. She gets the headline. They talk mostly about Amy Klobuchar here at the first.
She's like the sponsored ad.
Yeah, but
though,
like exactly, it's like a sponsored tweet. And
she's the sponsored
the viral
tweet.
treat. She's the sponsored.
Yeah,
tweet.
exactly.
But I think just to get to your point, what is the Iowa media talking about? They've definitely recognized Andrew Yang as a big player, and they're definitely recognizing the Yang gang and their influence. And I think that's very interesting. What happens on Monday, who knows, man? But I thought it was pretty cool here that the Friday, the last day leading up, just looking at what is Andrew Yang being written about. Getting somebody from Cedar Rapids, because again, we're talking about delegates here in the caucus system. If that moves the needle, I don't know enough about the region and that publication and the person who wrote it to say if that's going to move the needle. But think about it. When you're working in a caucus system, if that moves the needle in that one county and he gets that one delegate, wow, that's awesome, right? That's it doesn't have to change how everyone in Iowa thinks.
Yeah.
It's got to change maybe the opinion of 100 people.
No,
in
you just
one
need a
city.
couple of those upsets.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, what do you think the general? If you had to put in one sentence or one word, whichever one comes easiest first, what would you say the general feel of the Iowa newspapers are, of the Iowa press are?
Yang's got their attention.
Yang's got their attention. Okay, cool. Awesome. Anyway, I was about to say the same thing. Yang's got their attention. He's being taken seriously now. If it's serious enough to pull off some of these upsets in the caucus, we're going to find out. But we've seen some op-ed endorsements. We've seen some really interesting thought processes that these people have of how the freedom dividend could help their lives, put out in a very articulate manner that I think was very compelling. And I mean, we're in the 11th hour. This is almost like the last broadcast before the Luftwaffe show up. You know what I'm saying? In the Battle of Britain or something like that, because shelling starts at 7 a.m. So we'll know here pretty soon what all of this hullabaloo actually converts into. But anyway, let us know what you guys think below. Provide us with any links if there's any other local endemic media that we haven't been able to see from afar here in Los Angeles. But yeah, we definitely know what you guys want to think. Make sure you follow us on Twitter on PSP Radio 1 and on Instagram at Problem Solver Politics, and hang out with us Mondays and Thursdays when we live stream. This is Problem Solver Politics. We'll see you guys in the next video.